Man, there's a ton of energy in here. I know I grabbed a Red Bull before I came, so I know where my energies come from. But man, where did you guys get so much energy? This is fabulous. You guys are just excited about Jesus, excited about the United. I get it. But we are in a series called All the Feels. Before we go any further in the series, though, man, did the band not do a phenomenal job tonight, setting an atmosphere in this place? And we're going to get back into worship a little bit at the end because I believe tonight's going to be just a really special night. And I believe that God's going to do some things. How many of you came to church believing that God was going to do some things in your life? I think it's always good when we come in with an expectation. In fact, usually, if you come in with no expectation, you get exactly what you came expecting. Nothing. But if you come in expecting, God, you're going to meet me where I'm at tonight. God, you're going to do something in my life. Guess what he does? He's a good God. He does something. But before we go any further, I want to sing happy birthday to somebody. It was one of our leaders' birthdays, and Alexa, it was her birthday on Monday. And where are you, Alexa? Are you in here? Where are you? Oh, you're over here. You're usually sitting over here. Can we do this? Can we sing happy birthday to Alexa tonight? That'd be all right? All right. Well, I'm going to count to 3, and everybody please join me. Please join me in singing because the Bible says make a joyful noise. My noise is not joyful, so please. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Alexa. Just kidding. Happy birthday to you. There we go. All right. Here at the United, we are family, so we sing happy birthday to each other sometimes. If it was your birthday and I missed your birthday, please don't get offended. I apologize, and you can DM me later and let me know when your birthday is, and we'll try to sing it next year. But turn with me, if you would, to Psalms chapter 147. Psalms 147, and we're going to look at verse 3 tonight. I want to welcome all of the Multi-County Juvenile Attention Center. I want to also welcome NERC, anybody who's tuning in with us tonight. Also YouTube, man, thanks so much for being with us. We're so glad that you're a part of our family as well. Yeah, we can hear it for them real quick, loud and proud. You're like, you told us to turn in our Bibles, and then you told us to clap. That doesn't work. I'm sorry. It's fine. Anyway, Psalm 147, verse number 3, it says this. It says, he heals the brokenhearted, and he binds up their wounds. He heals the brokenhearted, and he binds up their wounds. Now let's flip over to Psalm chapter 34 and verse 18. Psalm 34, verse 18, it says, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. He delivers those who are discouraged. He delivers those who are discouraged. I believe that there are some of you in here that maybe you need delivered from the discouragement of your past. And some of you, regardless of where you've come from, regardless of what your family dynamic might be, regardless of what your relationship history looks like, I would venture to say that we all have some sort of relational pain. We all have experienced pain from a relationship. Maybe for you, it has been dating relationships. Maybe for you, it's been that your parents went through a divorce. Maybe it's looked like mom or dad not treating you the right way. I don't know what your background is, and I don't know what relational pain you've experienced, but what I do know is that we all have experienced emotional pain. None of us are exempt from emotional pain, and I want to speak to that tonight because I believe that God wants to deliver you from your discouragement. So this is All the Feels Part 2, and we're talking about God delivering us from discouragement. You can put deliver, he delivers me from discouragement. If you're taking notes, that's a great place to start. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about how we hate to go to the doctor. I don't know about you, but I just do not like to go to the doctor. Anybody else? You're like, I don't like to go to the doctor. But we all have that friend, right, who loves to go to the doctor. who's like the stat care champion, who like, they get a paper cut and they're like, I got another stat care, I'm bleeding. Like, and you're like, dude, calm down. Like, it's a paper cut. Like, I have that friend. I'm not going to mention who it is because a lot of you know him. But we all have that friend. How many of you have that friend that like they're always going to the doctor? Every time they have a head cold, they're like in the doctor's office, paper cut, stat care, like, you know what I mean? Sprained ankle, stat care. It's like, holy cow, you keep stat care in business. Stat care should write you a thank you at the end of the year. But most of us, if we're honest, we don't like going to the doctor. I'm a lot that way, and so is my dad. And there's this story that I'll never forget, and it was a real life story. And how many of you know real life stories are real life, so you usually don't forget them? But we were in Walmart. Why were we in Walmart? I don't know. We should have chosen Target, but we were in Walmart. I just graduated. Sorry, guys, if you love Walmart. I heard somebody say, wow. I don't understand. Target is just way better. I don't want to get into an argument or dispute right now, and I'm sorry, but Target's way better. Never mind. Anyways, let's get into it. Somebody's gonna write me an email like, Target stands for something that I don't agree with, and it's great. Please save your email. I don't care. Anyways, we were at Walmart, and I had just graduated high school. I had been removed from high school about a year. I was there with my parents, and I was about to go to Rhema and embark on this new journey of Bible school. And my dad and I are looking in the automotive section because, I had to get everything situated with the ride before I headed off to Rhema and, whatever that looked like, and get some new tires and stuff like that, cool stuff. So we're over looking at the tires, and all of a sudden I'm walking, and I turn around, and my dad is nowhere to be found. And so I look, and I'm like, he was right behind me. And I look, and I go, and here he's kneeled down behind this stack of tires, holding his chest. And I'm like, Dad, what's wrong? You good? He's like, man, I'm just having this chest pain. Just dropped me to my knees. I'm like, well, we need to go to the doctor. Like, we need to go to the ER. We need to go to the hospital. This is nuts. Like, this is crazy. You're like having chest pains. Let's go. No, I don't need to go. I was like, Dad, no, like, I think we need to go. Fortunately for my dad, I'm just as stubborn and like gonna have it my way as him. And so like we duked it out for about 45 minutes. And I was like, Dad, no, like get in the car. We are going to the emergency room. And we got to the emergency room, and it's a good thing we went because he actually was having a mild heart attack, and he needed to go ahead and get a quadruple bypass surgery because he had something, some blockages in his arteries. But man, he fought it for a good 45 minutes to an hour, fought going to the doctor, finally got there. And when we got there, I'll never forget, he had to go into a surgery where they had to like go ahead and cut him open. They had to like repair some things. They had to clean some things out. And then they had to bind him and stitch him back up so that he would be good like new again. And I really got this picture today as I was praying and preparing that I believe that that's what God wants to do in your heart tonight. That you have a blockage that is keeping you from God's best. You have some emotional baggage that you're carrying that you have to get rid of. You have some stuff going on in here that is blocking you from God's best in your life, and God wants to set you free from that by healing and mending and clearing out what he needs to and binding you back up. How many of you know that he does bind your wounds? That Jesus is the only one that can heal your heart, and he is the only one who can bind your brokenness. He's the only one who can mend your brokenness back together. And so here's the key. Here's going to be the key. I'm hoping that you're not like my dad was. I'm hoping that I don't have to convince you for 45 minutes to just like go ahead and get rid of the blockage so you can experience the best life that God has for you. Because how many of you know that God has a good life for you and he wants you to have good, healthy relationships? But you can't have healthy relationships externally until you've been healed on the inside internally. He has to internally do some healing on the inside of some of you so you can experience healthy, good, strong relationships. Some of you have experienced such dysfunction in your relationships. You've experienced unhealthy relationships, and it all stems back to what's going on in here. See, it's often that what's going on out here is a reflection of what's going on in here. And we talk a lot about what goes on out here, like what to look for and who to date. And I think that's awesome. I think it's awesome to be selective. I think it's awesome to have some characteristics that you're looking for. But until you deal with you, until you, better yet, allow God to deal with you by handing over the pieces of your brokenness and allowing him to mend it back together, by giving him the parts of your heart that are broken and allowing him to do a surgery on you, so to speak, you will never be the person that he's called you to be, and you'll never have the relationship health that he's called you to have. And so I want to talk to you tonight about 3 don'ts of dysfunction, because I believe that God wants us to have good, healthy relationships. But first, we've got to hand him over the parts of us that are broken. We've got to hand him over the parts of us that where we're brokenhearted and allow him to go ahead and mend it. I'll never forget that when they stitched my dad back up and when he woke up from that surgery, they said, "You're good. Like everything went great and you're good for the next 50 years. You're good for the rest of your life. You won't have an issue with this." And I want to encourage some of you tonight. You've had issue after issue after issue with relational pain. But I believe there's going to be something that happens in the presence of God tonight where it's like after tonight you're good. And you know there's a place you can go called his presence, and you can lay whatever it is that's going on at his feet, and you can experience healing, and you can experience peace, and you can experience his joy, and you can be the whole person that you were meant to be so that you can actually add value to someone else. In a dating relationship, in community and groups. Some of you don't open up in groups because you're so broken yourself that you're afraid that anybody would actually see beyond the mask that you put up. So 3 don'ts to dysfunction before I go any further with that. The first don't is don't allow the dysfunction of your past to dictate the decisions in your future. Don't allow the dysfunction of your past to dictate your decisions in the future. How often do we see this happen? Where you've had dysfunction in your past relationships, and so you just keep acting in accordance with the dysfunction. There's been dysfunction in your family. Maybe you come from a family where grandma and grandpa got divorced, mom and dad got divorced. Relationships have never worked out. And so, hey, I'm just going to continue on that dysfunction. Just because there's dysfunction in your past doesn't mean you have to let it affect your decisions. See, you have a decision to make. You have decisions that you can make that point you in the right direction towards healthy relationships. If you make the right decisions, you'll find yourself in the right direction. And when you're in the right direction, you'll experience God's best. But if you allow dysfunction to dictate those decisions, you'll find yourself walking into things that you want no part of. You'll find yourself in relationships that you shouldn't be in. You'll find yourself even ruining the right relationships because you're so used to dysfunction that you don't know what normal is. I think when we've dealt with dysfunction, there's something that we need to do. There's a time of separation. Sometimes the best decision that we can make is to separate ourselves from dating for a while and get this relationship right and allow him to heal us on the inside. And I always encourage people when they've come out of relationships, because if you ever noticed, somebody that comes out of a dysfunctional relationship will usually jump right back into another dysfunctional relationship, and then another dysfunctional relationship, and then another dysfunctional relationship, and it just goes from dysfunction to dysfunction to dysfunction. That's usually the trend. I would encourage you to make this decision. Take a step back for 6 months. Take a step back and separate yourself. Separate yourself and focus on your relationship with God. Focus on your time in his presence. Focus on your first 15, as we call it. 5 minutes in his word, 5 minutes in his presence, and 5 minutes praying. Focus on allowing him to heal those parts in you that are broken. Allow him to do a work in you. Allow him to speak affirmation to your heart. Allow him to reveal your identity and allow him to be your identity. Because if you don't allow him to be your identity, you'll always deal with insecurity. If you don't allow Jesus to define your identity, you're gonna always find yourself dealing with insecurity. And dysfunction is usually the result of desperation. And desperation is usually the result of insecurity. And insecurity, it all stems back to identity. I believe it's so important that we know this because I believe that God, again, wants us to have healthy, good relationships. Don't allow yourself to be deceived that you're destined for dysfunction. God has something far better for you. And I just want to encourage you tonight, if you've experienced dysfunction in your past, If you've experienced broken relationships in your past, whether it be in your family, whether it be yourself, your dating relationships have been a mess, I want to encourage you, you can end the cycle. You can make a decision tonight, I'm going to end the cycle of dysfunction. I believe that you don't have to allow the pain that's in your past to become a pitfall in your future. That's a choice. That's a decision you make. See, a lot of times we take pain and relational pain that was in our past and we allow it to be a pitfall in our future because we don't handle it the right way. How is handling it the right way? It's giving it over to God because you have a genuine, authentic relationship with Him. It's letting Him deal with it and letting Him deal with you and mold you into who He's called you to be. It's vitally important. So the pain of your past, again, doesn't have to lead to the pitfall in your future. Just because you've had dysfunction in your previous relationships doesn't mean you have to allow it into your next one. It's a decision. And I want to encourage you with that, emphasize that. You make a decision to not walk in relationships that are dysfunctional. It's your choice. The second thing is simply this. Don't allow someone who doesn't see your value to cause you to question your worth. I love in Psalm 34 where it says that you need delivered, that He delivers us from discouragement. He is the deliverer from our discouragement. Some of you need delivered from discouragement. And I see this happen all the time. Like, ladies, maybe to give an example, you're like after this guy and he keeps leading you on and he acts like he likes you all the time until someone maybe that it seems like to him is better, quote unquote, comes along. So you're always just stuck in the middle. You're always just that middle person. You're always just the person to help him get to the next person. Every time he breaks up with that person, he's back to you, but then he'll find someone else later on. And you're always just that person that he defaults to. You're always just the person that he goes back to. You've been chasing, you've been wanting, he flirts back, he does all of that. And because of that, you've allowed yourself to become discouraged. Because for some reason, he keeps going somewhere else. It could be the opposite way around. Maybe you're a guy and you're chasing. And man, there's nothing worse than this. We had some guys in the U a few years back that would actually chase girls into the parking lot to their cars. That was awkward. But we had some desperation going on. But like you get friend zoned and then you just keep trying. You get friend zoned again and you keep trying. But each time that you try, there's something else that causes you to feel super discouraged in that relationship. And here's where the biggest discouragement comes. I truly believe it comes through this. The thought that I'm not fill in the blank with whatever. I'm not blank enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not cool enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not skinny enough. I'm not pretty enough. Guys, I'm not handsome, whatever you call it, enough. You fill in the blank with whatever you want to fill the blank in with. You're not enough. And the enemy would love for you to believe that you're not enough. Because if the enemy can keep you believing that you're not enough, he'll keep you going ahead and settling in everything that you do for less than what you actually could have. He'll get you settling for less than God's best because he has you believing you're not enough. So you're not thinking that God could possibly have any better for you because you probably don't deserve it because you're not enough. You start to get down on yourself. And what happens? I believe when you're discouraged, desperation really starts to creep in if you're not careful. Why is it so important that we allow God to deal with this discouragement, that we allow God to deliver us from this discouragement? Why is that so important? And I want you to pay attention here. I want you to focus here. Why is it so important that we allow God to deal with our discouragement? Because if you don't allow God to deal with your discouragement, you don't find your confidence and identity in him, you'll end up settling for and dating anyone out of desperation who pursues you. And you'll stop making decisions about who you date proactively, and you'll start making decisions about who you date reactively. Whoever pursues, I'll react. And whenever you start reactive dating rather than proactive dating, you're setting yourself up for dysfunction. because I believe that we're called to be selective. I believe that we're called to have standards. That doesn't mean we act like we're better than everybody else and we act like no one else is on our level. It just means that we're not gonna date people that don't have certain qualities. We're not gonna date people who don't make church a priority. If church isn't on their list of priorities, they shouldn't be on your list of options. We don't date people who don't make God and their relationship with God the number one thing. We don't date people who don't have a moral compass that is gonna point them towards purity. We don't date people who just live their life whatever way. No, we're selective. We date people who are passionate about keeping their purity and will set boundaries. Ladies, you need to hear this because the enemy is gonna try to get you to question your worth and get you insecure about yourself so that you make decisions based on who you think you're not rather than who you actually are. That's why it's so important that your affirmation, that your identity, that your confidence comes from Jesus and Jesus alone. In this next season of your life, in this next season of your dating, make sure that you're making the decision proactively, not reactively. Not just anyone who pursues because I'm desperate, I'll date you. Yes, I've got a date. Man, I see this all the time, all the way up through young adults. I see people date out of desperation. They would do anything for a date. And then they're like, yes, I've got a date. It's great, I love this. I love my life right now. And it's like, should you be dating her? I don't know, she's hot. It's like, that's gonna help you in your walk with God. And when you're 80, you're really gonna have some great, things going. No, find somebody that's gonna complement your calling. If you don't know what your calling is, if you don't know where you're going in life, maybe that's a place to start right now in your relationship with God. God, what are you calling me to do? God, I wanna be sensitive to you in my decision making. I wanna be proactive in my decision making. I wanna be proactive, meaning that I want it to be prayed out before I date somebody. Not just based on the feeling, that they make me feel like I'm enough, that they make me feel like I'm it. They make me feel good, but no, it's based on, man, I prayed this out. I've been proactive. I've been selective. I've set standards. And God, I believe you're leading me into a relationship with somebody that's gonna benefit me, and more importantly, I'm gonna add value to them. But you can't add value to someone else if you don't know the value that you actually have. That's good, Josh. And I think the biggest deficit in dating is that we don't actually know our true value. We don't actually have a grasp on our true identity. So we go into it looking for what need they can meet in us, what void they can fill in us, rather than what value we can add to them. Why? Because we don't know our value. If you don't know your value, how can you add any? Allow God to affirm your identity. Allow him to speak to your value. I want to share with you just a couple things really quick, but first I want to say this. In relationships, don't tolerate toxicity. Don't tolerate toxic relationships. Because there are too many toxic relationships where somebody only has you when it's convenient. They only date you. They only see you when it's convenient. And if I'm honest, guys, we're notorious for this. We'll go to convenience sometimes. We'll default to convenience and what's convenient. Guys, let's be mature enough that we don't have toxic relationships. Ladies, if he doesn't treat you right, get out of it. If he is verbally mean to you, if he raises his voice to you, if he says negative things whenever he's feeling bad about himself, whenever he's feeling bad, whenever he's insecure in the relationship, if he makes digs at you to make you feel less about yourself so that you'll stay with him, you've got to get out of that relationship. You've got to have and set the value on yourself by knowing and having it affirmed from God. Honestly, too many toxic relationships take place because we don't know our identity. The third thing is simply this. Don't allow yourself to think that you deserve anything less than God's best. That goes right along with what we're talking about with toxic relationship. Don't allow yourself to think that you deserve any less than God's best. God has a best for you. I'm so thankful in my life for the relationships that didn't work out. The relationships that I thought I wanted so badly. I look back to high school and some of the people I went to high school with, that they went down completely different paths than what I did. They didn't end up staying in church. Let's just put it that way. They didn't end up serving Jesus. And so I think now looking back on my life, I'm like, man, God, I'm so thankful that I had a relationship with you I'm so thankful that the righteous person, their steps are ordered of the Lord. And I'm so thankful that you ordered my steps, that as I was serving in the house, you brought someone else that was passionate about the house into my life that then complements my calling. And I look at, I think it's so important, and thinking about it now as a 32-year-old, I think it's vital because, man, I want to raise my kids in church. I want my kids to love church. And I can't imagine being married to somebody that didn't share that same passion for God's house that I have. I can't imagine being married to a person that didn't share the same passion for ministry that I have. I can't imagine being married to a person that didn't push me and challenge me to be a better person and a better follower of Jesus. I was going to say Jesus follower and follower of Jesus, and it mixed. Follower of Jesus than I was yesterday. I can't imagine it, but I'm so thankful that I found that. I'm so thankful that I have that in my life. And for you, if I could wish anything for you, it's that you would be as blessed as what I am, and what so many people who are married in this room would say that they are, that they're in a relationship with somebody that points them to Jesus, that brings them closer to him, that points them back to their calling. God has a best for you. I just want to encourage you that God has something great in your future, that God has somebody great that he wants to pair you with, that will be your partner in life, that will complement your calling, that'll help push you closer to Jesus. Some of you may not see it now, but on the other side of some rough years of insecurity that might be your high school experience, God has something great on the other side of it. That if you'll just, in your times of insecurity and in your times of feeling the lowest and in your times of feeling like you're not enough, if you'll just come into his presence, if you'll just take a moment in his presence, if you'll just remind yourself of his goodness, if you'll just remind yourself that he is your peace, that he is your joy, that he is your confidence, he'll start to speak back to your heart. He'll start to affirm in your heart, give you a confidence and an encouragement in your heart that you are enough, that he's created you just the way you are, that you're his masterpiece, that he's got great plans for your future. And that includes someone to date that's going to complement everything about you, including your calling. I have 3 things that I wanted to share with you really quickly when it comes to our expectations, because one of the greatest causes of divorce in our nation, the second greatest in fact, is unrealistic expectations. And I believe that we're called as a younger generation to flip the script on, they say the divorce rate is the same in the church as it is in the world, that it's about 50% in the world and it's about 50% in the church. But I believe that we as a generation are called to be different. We're called to flip the script on this. And here's how. Unrealistic expectations is the number 1. Here's what unrealistic, or this number 2. Here's what it is, here's the definition. You have an expectation that a relationship will fill the voids in your life that only God can fill. You're in the relationship for what you can get from the other person. This is vitally important because unrealistic expectations are you trying to get others to fill a void in you that only God can fill. And you're going ahead and trying to get them to add value to you. You're trying to take value. See, we go into relationships for adding value, for what we can give to the relationship. And it is a give and take, it's true. You're gonna get what you need, but you've got to go into it ready to add value. Because nobody wants to be in a one-sided relationship where you're just looking for somebody to meet all of your needs, but you haven't done anything to develop you, or you haven't established your relationship with God to actually meet any of theirs. Right. Unrealistic expectations where you're expecting that once I have a relationship, once I get into this relationship, then I'm gonna have confidence, then I'm gonna be validated, then I'm gonna have security, then I'm gonna feel good about me. It's unrealistic. You're putting something on that person that they can't carry. You're trying to get them to meet a need that they were never meant to fill. The second thing is unhealthy expectations. You've experienced unhealthy relationships and you have an expectation that that's just how relationships are and that's how they'll always be. That's how your relationships will always be. You have an expectation of unhealthy. I believe because of Jesus, because of the hope that we have in him, and because of how his word directs us and guides us to handle our relationships, to have standards, to focus on our relationship with him. I believe that we can expect to have healthy relationships. When we do things God's way, we get his results. The third thing is a godly awareness. You have one of these three, a godly awareness. You spend your time becoming who you need to be to attract the type of person that you want. You go into the relationship looking to give and add value to the other person. So we have unrealistic expectations, unhealthy expectations, and godly awareness. I want to ask you tonight, which one of those defines you? Which one of those categories do you find yourself in most? Is it unrealistic expectations where you just feel the need to be in a relationship so badly to fill a void? Is it unhealthy where you're like, well, I can't expect anything better? Yeah, he treats me bad sometimes, but man, I think he really loves me. Or do you have a godly awareness? An awareness that if I'm growing in my relationship with God, becoming the man or woman of God that he's called me to be, that in the right season, under the right circumstances, God's gonna bring somebody across my path and I'm gonna be able to add value to them and they're gonna add value to me. It's vitally important. I'm gonna ask the band to come back up and join me as I make a couple closing statements. I just wanna encourage each of you in here to identify which category you're in first, and secondly, to know what you want. And listen, I want you to write this down. If you don't know what you want, you'll end up settling for what you think you need. If you don't know what you want in someone to date, you'll end up settling for what you think you need. It's okay to have standards. It's okay to be selective. In fact, I'd encourage you to do that. I want to encourage you with this, and I'd love for you to write this down as well. Giving up what you want right now for what you know you'll want more later, it isn't a sacrifice, it's an investment. Giving up what you want right now for what you know you'll want more in the future, it isn't a sacrifice, but rather it's an investment. I'll never forget, I was having a conversation on a campus after we had done a campus study, and we're on different college campuses, Malone, Akron, Kent Stark. We do some different groups and things there. And I was speaking at Malone University, and after I got done speaking, it was, our group, so I think, maybe between 50 and 60 people. There was a girl that stayed after with a friend of hers. And Devin and I were there, and she asked to talk to me, so I brought Dev along, and we had a conversation with her. And she started to talk about the relationship that she was currently in, because I was talking about the love of Jesus, but then I made a couple statements about dating that made her really think. And she was asking this question. She said, well, if Jesus has called us to love, like she's naming all these things that her boyfriend was doing wrong, all these things that he was causing her to compromise in. She just started spilling it all out there. He's causing me to compromise in this, and sometimes, he doesn't treat me right. And sometimes there are a lot of things that he doesn't really live the best Christian life in, but I just feel like, aren't we supposed to have the love of Jesus towards people? And I want to clear that up for you really quickly. That yes, we're supposed to love all people, but just because we're loving all people with the love of Jesus, that doesn't mean that they're in our closest confines of community. See, I believe that we have to be selective, especially in who we date, that we're careful, that we have standards, that we're not saying, hey, I'm gonna date you even though I see this, this, and this, even though there are a million red flags because I have the love of Jesus. No. The love of Jesus will tell them, hey, there are some things that you need to work on, and I'd encourage you to get in a group. I'd encourage you to get into church. I'd encourage you to get in a group, and I'd encourage you to have other people that challenge you. But as far as a relationship, man, it is much easier for someone to pull you down than you to pull them up. You've got to know, you've got to be selective. And when it comes to your core friends, see, Jesus was a friend of sinners, and people take that and they're like, well, I'm supposed to, my closest, be careful with that. You can be a friend of sinners without having sinners in your core group of friends. Because can I encourage you, you aren't helping anybody that's pulling you down. They're hurting you more than you're helping them. When it comes to your core community, and listen, I have friends that are great friends. They're living in the world right now. They're my friends. I'm close with them. I'll show up at their birthday party, but guess what? I'm not having the meaningful conversations with them. They're not the people that I'm gleaning my advice from. They're not the people that are in my core of community. Why? Because I'm careful in choosing my core of community. Be careful in choosing and making decisions about who you date, and be careful in choosing and be selective in your core of community, because you will become like those you are around the most, for the better or for the worst. But I believe wholeheartedly in here tonight that some of you, your relationships have been defined by dysfunction. Maybe it's your fault, maybe it's not. Maybe it's bad decisions that you've made. Doesn't matter. I believe that Jesus wants to heal. I love that phrase, that he goes ahead and he helps those who are discouraged. Or it actually says in Psalm 34:18, he delivers those who are discouraged. You can have deliverance tonight from the discouragement. Some of you have felt like for so long that you're not enough. Some of you have felt like for so long that you just yearn for somebody to see your value. Can I encourage you that the one who created you sees your value, and he's the only one that can speak to what you're worth? And I believe that tonight, as we get back into his presence, he wants to do just that. And as we're singing about how good God is tonight, I'm hoping that it doesn't take you as long as it took my dad to convince that all of us sometimes in our lives, we need something to take place. We need God to do a surgery on our heart to go ahead and bind together the broken pieces. We need God to do something to go ahead and clear up what needs cleared up, to mend up what needs mended up, to go ahead and make us whole again. But he can only mend the pieces if you give them over to him. He can only heal what you reveal. God can't heal what you conceal.